That's such a powerful frame, I think, because what you're describing, like detox anxiety, withdrawal anxiety, people don't see it, and then when they feel it, they just go back to the pacifier, the
Yes.
phone in the hand. And I think now you can't change anything until you're aware of it, right? But awareness won't change it either. So you have to, like what you just described when you mapped out your day, is a lot of spiritual discipline. You said, I have this daily check sheet in front of me because I want to keep it in my face. Because if I don't, there's a tendency for that lower self to hijack, to chase
fall
the
back
dopamine.
asleep.
You'll fall back asleep. So I'm big with clients on this. I'm like, how in your face can we get this to possibly be, whether it's notes on the mirror or something, but like reminder, and then become aware of those things, but then have the spiritual discipline to cultivate the strength to sit in those spaces.
Yes.
So you mentioned a key word, anxiety, here. And like you said, it is exploding. And we all have a certain manifestation of anxiety. If somebody's feeling anxious, they self-identify like, I am an anxious person, or anxiety's in my family line. How could one use something like breath work to combat anxiety, to quell anxiety?
I think first, again, like not using the term I, and say my person is anxious, and that will create a little bit of separation and not fall into. So what's interesting about anxiety is that, right, it's fear of the unknown. So usually there's like a trigger. So say like rent due is the trigger, and there's a behavior that follows. So there's a trigger, a behavior, and a result. So when you get triggered for something that can really kind of promote anxiety, there's first a behavior that kind of follows that trigger. And most of the time, seemingly, we all fall, and it's hard to catch this behavior. It's the mental behavior of worry. And this one's an interesting one because it's not a physical behavior. It's not something like grabbing a phone or going to the fridge or having a drink. It's a unique behavior. And the brain doesn't realize what it's doing. It's creating this mental behavior of worry, but it thinks it's actually going to solve a problem, but it's really not solving a problem. It's just manifesting movies of worry or dread and kind of playing that. And that's what creates anxiety. And then anxiety creates more worry, and you get caught in this cyclical loop. So really it's like the art of pausing. So the triggers are going to happen as we go through this experience. How can we have the awareness or the ability to pause whenever we become triggered? And that's where like the terminology of my person is really good. So when my person gets triggered for whatever reason, I'm like, ooh, my person just became triggered. So that gives me ability to pause and be like, all right, so what can I do right now to manage this trigger? And if we're not careful, we can fall into the behavior of worry, especially if it's tied to something with anxiety, fear of the unknown. And so at that point, I have a wonderful ability to either take that trigger, that energy that was just created within my vessel, and, breathe it out, or I can have the awareness of like going into the grass or going into the sun, or, or what have you. And, or if it's a really big trigger, like, leading into a full breath work and meditation. And then after that behavior that I chose, a more positive behavior, a bigger, better behavior as well, I can then ask my person, like, how do you feel? And then that creates quite a bit of data for my person over time. And then I can almost essentially not fall into anxiety just by having that awareness of like, oop, there's a trigger, because I don't think anxiety just doesn't happen. It's not like it's just like I'm anxious. It's like, well, something caused the anxiety. So if you have these moments, the ability to pause, the awareness to be able to look at it through certain dialogue with yourself. But as you mentioned, this is kind of hard, this place of awareness. So that's why practicing presence is key, because presence equals awareness equals behavioral change. And so that's the fucking pattern. That's the way it goes down. So if you don't practice presence, you're not going to be able to be aware to pause or have dialogue, and you're certainly not going to be able to make behavioral changes. So if people really can just simplify this as much as possible, it's like practice presence, presence. And from that, again, portal opens, you'll get all the shit that you need, all the downloads, all the awareness, all the pausing that you could possibly ever need. And so presence is definitely the key.
Hello friends, if you enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the entire thing by heading to this link over here, or you can find us wherever you find podcasts by searching Radical Health Radio. If there's value here, please hit that like button, let us know in a comment what your biggest takeaway was, and hit subscribe, support the show as we support you. We'll see you soon.